and we are excited and to listen your thoughts. Over to Swamiji.
Om Namasre Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukhaswarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. First and foremost, I am very happy that a study center has been started in Mangalore University to discuss, to internalize the teachings of the life and message of Swami Vivekananda. It is very important, as I discovered when I attended the first conference, perhaps by any monastic member in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which is very rare. And since it dealt with youths, especially that conference, and UNESCO being an organization which promotes the concept of a universal personality, as Swamiji would have liked to do. In fact, one of the director generals of UNESCO once mentioned, they in fact celebrated Swami Vivekananda's 100th, that is centenary, in Paris by saying that strangely, even 50 years before the UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, which promotes this kind of universal personality, was established 50 years before, Swami Vivekananda wrote a constitution which spoke about a kind of universal personality which was absolutely necessary if there has to be peace and progress in this world. Otherwise, narrow fanaticism is responsible for so much of conflict, so much of ill will and human suffering. So today it is very relevant, especially UNESCO is trying very hard. In fact, a conference is going on now and it is online, both online as well as offline, but unfortunately I could not go there. But the topic is almost similar. How can we change the situation, the present situation, where we can talk on more universal terms of a universal personality, because that alone can save this world. Now, the topic that has been given to me, though a lot of efforts have been done by many organizations, international organizations, we have to understand why they very often don't succeed fully. Not that they don't try, but they don't succeed fully. Because before trying to understand this concept of universal personality, we have to understand one fact when we discuss it in the light of Swami Vivekananda, Swami Vivekananda's life and teachings, that he was not a scholar or an intellectual person. He was a prophetic person, a prophet. And being a prophet, they speak from personal experience, not through the intellect. And their life is their message. As Mahatma Gandhi once said, my life is my message. So we have to see that the personality, the concept of universal personality which Swamiji described is based on his own life. Unless we understand what his life was in brief, we cannot understand what are the universal values he proposed and which will lead to a universal personality. So his remarkably comprehensive and all-inclusive vision, which includes everybody, all nationalities, all religions, all people belonging to different castes, creeds, nationalities, ethnicities. But to understand that, we have to first understand what it means to have a truly universal personality. If we take up Swami Vivekananda's own life, you see his thought is universal. His love was universal, not restricted, though Indians would like to call him a patriot prophet, but he did not come for India alone. That is, he has made it very clear that though he did a lot for the growth and development of India, especially the youth and the underprivileged people and all, especially women, he did a lot of work. He inspired Nivedita, who met him in London, to go to India and work for the Indian women. No doubt, but his patriotism or his love for India was based on certain universal values and universal personalities who were his ideals. His own guru, Sri Ramakrishna, was his own ideal. So he stands up for mankind in general without any distinction of race, nationality, creed, or culture, gender, or age. So, in his encompassing vision, we'll find we can include all types and grades of human beings, from the lowest and the most ignorant to the highest and the most enlightened of human beings. Everybody can benefit from his life, personality, and his ideas. Moreover, we'll see as we discuss his teachings, we'll find that he takes into account the various aspects of human life, not just religious or spiritual. He dwells on the basic problems of human existence. He sees the divine self of man and looks upon the human form as the very symbol of divinity. No doubt he is a spiritual person, a religious leader, but we cannot restrict him to that. He has discussed about all the problems, the social problems, the political problems, the secular problems, the problems of poverty, economics, society, everything. Because in the core of his message, the core of his idea of universal personality is the divine self of man and every human form according to his philosophy, which he got from the inspiration he got from his master Sri Ramakrishna. The very symbol of divinity, the human's form is the very symbol of divinity. So his philosophy breathes a universal spirit, which is dynamic, it is all inclusive and all loving, which is rarely to be found elsewhere. There have been great religious movements, no doubt. Great spiritual personalities, great political personalities, great scientists have come. But you will not find another person who was as inclusive and as all loving and as universal as Swami Vivekananda. In fact, Swami Vivekananda said about his own master Sri Ramakrishna when he said that he was as broad as the sky, but at the same time he was very deep as the ocean. Very often we'll find in history that whenever there is intensity of thought, some people are very intensely wedded to certain ideology. There is a danger of them being fanatics. They think their way is the only way because the intensity has been, there is depth, but it leads to some kind of exclusiveness or fanaticism. On the other hand, if there is breadth of vision, like most of the international organizations, they say everybody is the same and all are to be treated equal. It is all lip service because equality is not there in this universe. Then the intensity of thought, if you have a very broad vision, the intensity of thought or depth suffers and the philosophy or the ideology becomes less effective. We can start any number of organizations. Superficially, they are very good. Ideologically also, they are very good. But somehow it is not effective because you have to go deep into the idea, internalize it, make it part of your personality. So the breadth of vision, which is broadness and all inclusiveness and intensity or depth of thought at the same time in the same personality is very, very difficult. And Swamiji says that it is his master who demonstrated this kind of personality. Very broad and universal, but at the same time very deep. Whatever he took up, he followed it to its logical conclusion. So in Swamiji's scheme of life, there is no conflict between faith and reason. You can't say that faith has to go against reason. You should simply believe in faith. You believe in my faith, I don't care what you believe. That cannot lead to peace and progress. There should not be any conflict between science and religion. Otherwise, scientists will always say that religion has caused all the problems, and the religious people will say science has caused all the problems and quarrels and all the conflicts in the world. Then there should not be any difference between poetry and philosophy. Poetry, which comes from the heart, should not contradict or should not be in conflict with the brain. So the mind, the heart, and the hands, the capacity to work, they should all be harmonious. Then only we can have a universal personality. And there should not be any distinction or no conflict between action and a life of meditation. One should be able to meditate at the same time be intensely active, and there should not be conflicts between social and monastic ideals. It's not that meditation and a spiritual life is only for monastics or monks. It is for all. Everybody in the social ladder should have access to spiritual values. Now, the plan Swami Vivekananda proposed is to lead each and every individual at whatever level he is, in whatever sphere of life, to the highest goal, to the realization of this inherent perfection along his own line of development. So Swamiji says, take a man where he stands and from there give him a lift. You don't have to expect him to fulfill certain conditions to give him a lift. He can be at any stage of life. He can be as ignorant as a savage or as ignorant as an animal, but still he has hope. And then he also said in another place in the complete works that our duty is to encourage everyone in his struggle to live up to his own highest ideal and strive at the same time to make the ideal as near as possible to the truth. So though we may not be ideal universal personalities, we should fulfill the conditions of our duty, the duty or the swadharma in which we are born. We should first be perfect in whatever work we take up or whatever profession we propose to follow, and then take it as near as possible to the universal ideal. You should not wait. First, you should be perfect in whatever we do. So we have to remember, to attain this, his Swami Vivekananda's universal personality or universality is rooted, firmly rooted. This is a very important point, that his experience of the spiritual oneness of existence. Mind my words, it is spiritual oneness of existence, not just a superficial oneness where we say all are brothers, all are equal, and there are so many verbal phrases which we use. There are so many isms, political systems, which say everybody should be equal, everybody should be given equal opportunity. But do we realize it? That realization comes only when we realize the spiritual oneness, and then only a transformation of personality, a narrow personality, can be effected, and that can lead to a universal personality. So Swami Vivekananda was not just his concept was not just an intellectual comprehension of these ideas, or maybe you can't say it is due to extensive knowledge, or maybe keen interest in human values, or a worldwide sympathy or fellow feeling. These are important for our secular work, but we have to go deeper. Most of the attempts which have been made in the world outside are based on these external factors. We say we are all equal, knowing fully well that we can't be equal. God has not created everybody equal. Otherwise, there would not be so much diversity in life. Why are some people weak? Why are some people strong? So that is why all these reform movements and political systems, which promised universal a universal personality to all its followers, they fail. They fail because they are trying to create an equality at the superficial level. So we have many systems which promote humanism, humanitarianism, and they call it universalism, and they value man as man irrespective of creed, color, rank, or position. But the highest conception they can have is only from the secular or empirical viewpoint. It has to go deeper. According to Swamiji, such systems may succeed for some time, but they will fail ultimately. You have to go deeper. But Swami Vivekananda very clearly insists on seeing divinity dwelling inside every human being, the free, immortal, and the divine existence inside us. What does it mean? The same supreme being, the same pure consciousness which dwells within each human being or each living being. Only they are not aware. Everybody is not equally aware, and they more or less they don't manifest it fully. Every man or every being internally is definitely pure consciousness. He is the supreme being, but covered with a layer of ignorance. So he took up the philosophy of Vedanta, which says the one infinite self, apparently divided into countless individual selves, even as one moon appears as many moons being reflected in the innumerable ripples of water. So that is the example given in our scriptures, that though the moon is one, when we see it on the ripples of the ocean, we see several moons, but that doesn't mean there are many moons. So of all living beings, only a human being can understand this fact, can realize this fact, can experience this fact, and confirm his essential identity with the divinity which is within, the supreme self. And all that is the reason why Swamiji says, first realize the divinity within, and then you will see it in every human being or every creature outside. He who attains to this spiritual experience alone can transcend all the distinctions, apparent distinctions, and develop universal love in the heart. So to develop universal love, it is very important. It's not enough to just emotional and feel for others. That is good. That feeling is good from a secular point of view. But if we realize that we are really divine, it is only our outer covering, our outer manifestation is different, as the Vedanta says. So let us come to the fundamental truths of the Upanishads or Vedantas in brief. I don't want to go into an elaborate discussion, but because this is the center of Swami Vivekananda's concept of universal personality, we have to identify them. What are the four basic principles with which we can establish this idea or concept of universal personality? First, our world of phenomena is ever changing. We see things are changing very fast, and we find it very difficult to keep pace with the changing society, the changing development. Every day something is becoming redundant, something new is coming, and people find it so difficult in their struggle to adapt to the changing circumstances. They are also marked by interdependence. You cannot say that I can be exclusively if I have to exclusive if I have to be happy. You have to be all inclusive. You can't say that I will alone be happy and all others let them go to hell. You can't do it. You are interdependent. Your happiness depends on the happiness of others. So that can only be possible if we identify an eternal ideal reality whom we call God, or in the language of the Upanishads, it is known as a universal existence or universal consciousness, which is Brahman, which is self-manifest in everybody and satisfies and answers to man's conception of perfection in every way. We all talk of perfection, but what is perfection? It is only, you can be only perfect when you realize this eternal spiritual oneness, which is the eternal reality behind all the changing reality of the world. The changing reality makes us feel weak. There are inferiority complexes, there are superiority complexes. Each one fights against equality. Everybody finds so much of injustice everywhere in the world, and he doesn't find a solution. He says, why is God like that? Why is God cruel? Or why is God beneficial to some people only? But the idea that it is we who out of ignorance think that we identify ourselves with our limited personalities, and that is why we suffer. In fact, the word personality has come from the word persona, which means mask. So we are not really able to understand what our personality is. We are identifying ourselves with our masks, the masks which say I am young, I am old, I am poor, I am black, I am white, I am strong, I am weak. All these are masks. So personality, in the ordinary sense, is a very, very limited idea. You have to understand, we have to go deeper and find out what is a universal personality. That means identifying yourself with the strength that is within, with the glory that is within, with the power of the soul which is within. Only when you do that, Swamiji says, you will make gradual progress and come towards this universal personality. So every individual who is tormented by this ceaseless change has to remember that to sustain his life, he has to meditate or identify himself with a central principle which is constant, self-luminous, ever pure and ever free. That is what God is all about. All religious people, all spiritual people said, unless you are steady, otherwise you will be this changing circumstances will simply drive you, or maybe you will be flown or you will be destroyed in these changing circumstances. Something should be there to hold on to, which will keep you steady. So the central principle you have to remember, where Swami Vivekananda said that the microcosm or the individual is not different in principle from the macrocosm, the whole universe. So we have all the powers of our universe, of Ishvara at our command if we want. But unfortunately, we are not realizing this identity. Every day, we are hypnotized by the society around us, by the people around us, telling that you are weak. The child, the moment he is born, he is told he is useless, he is weak, he is weak. Only weakness is taught to our children. But the strength that comes by having the kinship with the universal soul, the infinite power of glory and consciousness and purity which is within us, that idea has to be told to every child, according to Swamiji. And this should be the goal of your life. And all our concerns, all our politics, all our social movements, all our humanitarian activities, everything are okay, but they should have this as the basis, this spiritual oneness as the basis. So Swami Vivekananda believed that this spiritual unity which we get from the Upanishadic teachings, they are the ultimate support of all the diversity that we see. It is the goal, it should be the goal of all human knowledge. It is the universal principle that underlies all different religious doctrines, which are often so fanatical and so dogmatic that people kill each other for a simple difference of opinion. So it should not only cover religion or metaphysics, but all ethical ideals, all science also, all scientific ideals. So religion is not, universal personality is not for religious people alone, but also for scientists. Unless they are motivated by universal love, scientists can be extremely dangerous. They can, if they are selfish. So the same ideal, the imperfect world that we see, is because of our narrowness, not because if we identify ourselves, become unselfish and become one with the infinite spiritual consciousness within all of us, which is there in all of us, irrespective of his religion, caste, creed, gender. If that feeling is there, or that experience is there, feeling is not important. It is the experience that makes the entire difference. When Swami Vivekananda spoke of unity, why did people clap? Why did so many thousands of people when he said sisters and brothers of America? Because he really felt, his spirit felt that they were all real sisters and brothers. It was not just a verbal effusion or a verbal intellectual thought. That is why they could feel, oh, here is a man who is speaking what he is feeling, what he is experiencing. If you experience that, then our personality will be as universal as Swami Vivekananda's. The forms may differ. We may be having different professions, different interests in life, but that doesn't matter as long as we know that our self is the same. And if a person is established in that universal self, which the Upanishads speak of, then Swamiji says he will hate nobody, as the Gita says. So some wonderful quotes are there of Swami Vivekananda, which I have to quote now, because in that small paragraph, Swamiji is giving the gist of this universal personality. He says, there are so many things happening in this universe, but they are all at the surface. But if you go below that surface, you will find unity between man and man, between races and races, between high and low, between rich and poor, between gods and men, between men and animals. If you go deep enough, these are Swamiji's words. He says, all will be seen as only variations of that one universal existence. And he who has attained to this conception of oneness has no more delusion. So that is the idea. What can delude him? He knows the reality of everything, the secret of everything. Where is there any more misery for him? What does he desire? He has traced the reality of everything to the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Consciousness, the center, the unity of everything, and that is existence, Sat, eternal knowledge, eternal existence, Sat, eternal knowledge, Chit, that is consciousness or eternal knowledge, and eternal bliss. All other efforts will help us, no doubt, to get limited bliss, limited knowledge, or make us live in a temporary phase of life, not in eternity. So Swamiji says, for this to happen, we have to unite both to have a universal personality. There should not be any difference between the East and the West. He was the first prophet who said, all human beings, whether they belong to the East or the West, have certain great ideas. So Swamiji says, what has India to learn from the West, or what has the East to learn from the West? He was speaking of these things 100 years ago. Now we have learned many things. But Swamiji says India has to learn from Europe the conquest of the external nature. So it is very necessary. Science and technology helps us to conquer external nature, but that is not all. The problem is, we think by conquering external nature, we will be happy, we will be progressive, we will have that universal personality. But Swamiji says that is not going to happen. It's only half of the story. And Europe has to learn, Europe or the West has to learn from India the conquest of internal nature, that is spirituality. Then he says, in that case, a universal personality will be created who are neither Hindus nor Europeans, and there will be the ideal humanity which has conquered both the external and internal nature. We have developed one phase of humanity, the internal spiritual reality, the spiritual phase of humanity. And they have developed another, the external or the world. That is the external part of nature, not the internal part. But Swamiji says a universal personality can be attained if there is a union of the two. That is what is wanted. So the word freedom, when we say freedom, everybody swears with freedom. Everybody wants freedom. That means we should be free physically by following the Western methods. We have to be free. We have to be free. We have to use science and technology to solve our physical problems. We have to be free mentally and spiritually also. For that, you need the Eastern philosophy. So universal personality has to be very scientific, very technological if necessary to solve the physical problems. But at the same time, he should not neglect his mind and spirit. He should be free within. He should not be a slave to nature. He should not be a slave to every human being in the world. Otherwise, that will be very depressive, especially for youth. How much of depression and inferiority complex is there because of lack of physical and mental strength? But they don't realize we have to go deeper and have spiritual unity also. So the special contribution, how many minutes do I have now?
Swamiji, further 15 minutes.
Okay. There are question answers?
Yes, Swamiji, followed by question and answer.
Okay, then I'll make it a bit short. Okay. The special contribution of the East. Now I'm talking of the universal personality, because we have to remember this. We have to remember what we are good in. East, I don't mean every Indian, though he may be born in the East, that doesn't mean he is spiritual or inclined to spirituality. But I'm talking in general of the world culture, where the Eastern culture has contributed in the field of spirituality and religion, though we have contributed in other fields also. But their contribution of the West, if we broadly divide, now there is no East and West. We are all global citizens. There's a lot of mixing which has taken place. So Swamiji says the present age, that means 100 years ago, now it is more necessary to bring about a universal personality. We should not criticize either of these cultures. The West has contributed in its own way, but we have to see that we don't take the negative side of the West. The East has contributed half of it from the internal side, but there are other problems which led to our poverty of the East, or at least in the past. It caused a lot of poverty, and a lot of underprivileged people were living in India once upon a time, and still they are trying to come out of it. India is trying to come out of it. The most of the countries of the East are not affluent as the West, but along with the affluence, the spiritual contribution which India made has to be accepted by both the East and the West to create a universal personality. So the various races and nations of the world cannot be at any time at the same level economically, politically, socially, and culturally. Though we are talking of communism and many other isms, it is not possible for everybody to have equal facilities economically, politically. There will be differences, and their interests are also different. So you have to see the unity in variety, and this uniformity can be attained only if all of us, not a few people, most of us at least, a majority of us become universal personalities in the true sense. So physical, intellectual, aesthetic, moral, and spiritual development all should go hand in hand. Science and religion, arts and ethics, philosophy and mysticism, everything will have their respective places in our human life. It should have. One expression of life does not contradict another as long as it contributes to the highest good that man has to achieve. And what is the highest good? That Swamiji says that, and that highest good is to realize this idea that one atom in this universe, if you take modern physics for example, cannot move without dragging the whole world along with it. This Swami Vivekananda said long ago, even before quantum physics. Einstein and others discovered the principles of quantum physics. We have to remember that. Swamiji says, or based on his spiritual realizations, that one atom in this universe cannot move without dragging the whole world with it. So you can't say that I will make progress and others. If you do something evil, it is going to affect the entire world. If you do something good, it is going to it is going to affect the entire world. So he says there cannot be any progress without the whole world being affected, following in the wake. And it is becoming every day clearer that solution of any problem cannot be attained on racial, national, or narrow grounds. Every idea has to become broad. That's what his master Sri Ramakrishna said, till it covers the entire world. Every aspiration must go on increasing till it has engulfed the whole of humanity within its scope. Now, another contribution of Swamiji, which he got from his master, inspired by his master Sri Ramakrishna, was that he introduced to the entire world, and this is part of his developing a universal personality. That is, he said, since God dwells in man as the innermost self, he can be directly worshipped instead of going to temples, churches, mosques, and other things. You can worship him in human beings because he is the core of every human being. So he can be directly worshipped by serving man in that spirit. So all our social or humanitarian work, if it has to succeed, can be carried out in the spirit of service of the God in man. As Sri Ramakrishna told in his Bengali, simple Bengali, Shiva Gyane Jiva Seva. When Jiva is there, but try to see the Shiva in him, as Sri Ramakrishna describes it. So the development of universal personality through such worship, a new kind of worship, which was a revolutionary idea in those days. No prophet in India, at least, in the East, has ever said that throw all your gods and goddesses for the time being, throw them abroad. It requires so much courage to tell this. Not that he did not want people to worship in places of worship. That is very good. But don't restrict yourself to the places of worship. You have to worship, serve that God in man. That is a more powerful type of worship. It can result, so the development of a universal personality through such a worship, which anybody can follow, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, any person, irrespective of his caste, creed, religion, can develop his inner personality and also it will give rise to true welfare of the world if he serves every human being as the divine spirit, not because out of compassion or just to help them, but to serve them with the idea that the same divinity, since it is all pervading, the same consciousness, I can be spiritually, I can spiritually evolve if I worship them like that, in that spirit of Shiva Gyane Jiv Seva, or service of the God in man. So we see, I'll now conclude. So then we'll have some question answers. Swamiji Vivekananda says, in his religion, we are moving from a theocentric approach to religion. Theocentric means God-centered, worship-centered, temple-centered, church-centered, mosque-centered. That is known as theocentric religion. But his approach was human-centric. Why don't you practice religion through a human-centric approach to religion? And that is known as spirituality. But we have to remember this core point, that man's inner nature is more important than the outer resources. Now, this I am repeating again and again, because we are carried away with all the wonderful development that is taking place outside. They are very good. But we have to remember the core point, that man's inner nature first has to be set right. And if we want a universal personality, it is more important than the outer resources, which are important, no doubt. That is why Swamiji once said, it is man that makes money. Money does not make a man. So if we think that having a lot of money, we will be good men, that is a wrong idea. First be a man, then money will just follow you. Then he says, it is man that makes laws. You can't have laws to make a man. You can have any number of parliament resolutions and laws, but that will not make man good. It is man who makes laws. Laws do not make a man. And the final solution towards this universal personality should be based on moral and spiritual life. If these are lacking, Swamiji warned us again and again that nothing can save humanity. No political, good or bad political or economic system, no social order, no world organization, international organization, no advancement of science and technology can ever hope to establish peace and security in this world. Now, finally, I will conclude with two wonderful quotations, and then we'll be open for question answers. Swamiji says, these are very important quotes. It is change of the soul for the better that will alone cure all the evils of life. No amount of force or government or legislative rules will change the conditions of a race. But it is only and only the spiritual culture and the ethical culture alone that can change wrong racial tendencies for the better. Because he says, all systems, social or political, they are resting on one fundamental fact, that is goodness of men. He says no nation is great or good because its parliament enacts this or that. Because they are good only because their men are great and good. Laws will not make a country great. The laws may be the best in the world, but are the men following those laws? Are they great and good? Are the universal personalities created in our society? So religion goes to the root of the matter. If spirituality is right, religion is right, then everything else is right. Then he says, I direct my whole attention in creating this universal personality to the individual, to make him strong, to teach him that he himself is divine, and I call upon men to make themselves conscious of this divinity within. That is the only job he told Sister Nivedita he is doing. His main mission, when Nivedita asked him, what is your main mission in life? He says, I direct my attention only to the individual. I want to make him strong. How? By teaching him that he is divine, and I call upon all men to do the same, to be conscious of this divinity within. This is really the ideal, whether people believe in it or not, or whether conscious or unconscious. Every religion or every prophet tries to tell the same thing. So that is why he ends and says, it is a man-making religion that we want. It is man-making theories that we want. Man here means the universal personality. It is man-making education all around that we want. And here is the test of that religion. Anything that makes you weak, physically, intellectually, spiritually, reject it as poison. There is no life in it. It cannot be true. Because truth is always strengthening. Truth is purity. Truth is all knowledge. Truth must be strengthening, it must be enlightening, and must be invigorating. So now I'll conclude by saying that this man-making religion, which will give rise to a universal personality, this kind of religion or this kind of education alone can make a truly universal personality. It is his comprehensive message where science and religion, reason and faith, secular and sacred, modern and ancient, East and the West all became unified, and he himself, Swami Vivekananda himself, was the personification of this unification of this universal personality. So once again, I'm very happy that a forum has been organized in Mangalore University. The more we discuss, or the more we try to internalize Swamiji's ideas, and not only the concepts, but try to experience what he felt and carry it out in our various humanitarian and service activities, then we will ourselves become truly universal personalities and help to create more and more universal personalities all around us. Thank you once again for this nice opportunity to meet all the young people and share some of my thoughts on the concept of universal personality by Swami Vivekananda. Namaste.
Thank you so much for that thought-provoking topic, universal personality. Swami Vivekananda's universal personality certainly includes conviction to the power of goodness, absence of jealousy and suspicion, helping all who want to be good and do good. In that regard, our national poet, Rabindranath Tagore rightly said, in reference to Swami Vivekananda, in him, everything positive and nothing negative. So, my dear friends, till now we heard Swamiji's thoughts on the topic Swami Vivekananda and his concept of universal personality. Now it's a time for us to move towards a feedback session and the question and answer. So, if you have any question, please raise your hand. And I also among with us eminent personalities from all walks of life. Now among with us, Dr. S.C. Sharma, Director, NAC, the National Assessment Accreditation Council. Sir, we are indeed glad to have you here. So can you please unmute yourself? And please speak a few words to all the gatherings. Dr. S.C. Sharma, Director, NAC.
Namaste, Swamiji.
Namaste. How are you?
Fine,
It's so
Swamiji.
nice to see you after a long time.
Very, very nice, Swamiji. I am also thrilled, and I thank Dr. Ranjan because he told me, and I will take your email and telephone number from Dr. Ranjan, Swamiji. How are you, Swamiji?
Fine. We are all keeping well here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Swamiji, it was a wonderful lecture. As usual, I don't have to, give a certificate for your lecture with your vast experience. And now I've been dealing with a number of universities and across the country colleges with regard to assessment and accreditation. We have 7 criteria, and the 7th criteria is the extension activity. At some place, somewhere, as you rightly said, with all your delineations and explanation, universal love, that was your central theme. And you gave a lot of, left hand, right hand differences, secular, non-secular, and etc., etc., etc. But I personally feel, I think now in the new education policy, integrity is one of the most important component which the national education policy, in fact, does insist. Based on the national education policy, I think Dr. Ranjan is aware of it, and he will pass on some of the salient features. Swamiji, with this lecture, I would also like, make a request to you to address all the institutions and universities in India, including medical and engineering, and little extension and amalgamating the national education policy in India, Swamiji. This is my humble prayer to you, Swamiji.
Yeah, surely. If an opportunity presents itself, I would be very happy. If you can organize something, you can take my email and WhatsApp number from Ranjan. I will forward it to you. I think you must be having it. You can.
I think I do have Swami Sarvasthananda. Yes.
I'll forward it again to you, sir.
Yes, that's nice, Swamiji. Thank you. When you're in India,
Thank you.
Please do let me know.
I have not come to India for the last 2 years because of COVID.
Yes, Swamiji. Thank you. Namaskar, Swamiji.
Thank you, sir, for your presence and during your busy schedule. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ranjan. Thank you. You are also, Swamiji is far up and you're so near. We haven't met.
We'll certainly meet you, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Namaste. Thank you.
So for the next question, yes, we have a Dr. Shashi Kumar Shetty from Nitte deemed to be University, from a Department of Medical Imaging, and he's also an SS coordinator of the college, so for the university. Sir, Dr. Shashi Kumar, sir. Later I come to Dr. Satish.
Yeah, namaste, one and all who is gathered here.
Sir, please unmute yourself. Yes, sir. We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah. First, at most, namaste to Swami Sarvasthananda, Minister of In Charge, Ramakrishna Vedanta Center, United Kingdom, and my good friend Ranjan Millarpadi for giving me opportunity to give a feedback on this session. As all of you know, today's talk on Swami Vivekananda and his concept of universal personality, developed by Swami Sarvasthananda, has offered many fruitful ideas which are related to personality development in Vedantas. I'm also, I read every month the Vedanta Kesari, which is provided by Ranjan, where it gives a highlight of universal existence and personality. So as Swamiji recommended, to have faith, compassion, good thoughts, character, in spirituality, responsibility, truth. This is all which is taught on today's session. Thank you, Swamiji, for having you here and delivering talk on especially which is required for today's young generation, which is my students also representing from Nitte University, for taughting us how to be a human. Namaste, Swamiji. Namaste, Ranjan.
Namaste.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for your feedback. So Abhi got one more question. Personally, I got in the WhatsApp. Swamiji, how to control my negativity during the journey of universal personality development? So how to control my negativity, which includes ego, angry, and all such aspects, Swamiji?
Yeah, it is very easy. You don't have to control, because controlling means that you accept that you have negativity. So the more you think about your negativity and try to control it, it will cause more problems. The less you think of negative things, or the more you think of positive things and fill your mind with the highest thoughts, positive thoughts, then there won't be any time for negative thinking or negative aspects. So the only way, that is what Vedanta tells us, that insist on emphasizing or trying to experience the higher dimensions of your personality. Now, how can that be done? It can be done through 4 different ways. I will be very brief. Swami Vivekananda's important concept in developing such a personality is to increase our positivity through 4 methods. Every human being has 4 capacities. One is the capacity to think, the other is capacity to feel, other is capacity to act, to will, our willpower, that if I decide on something, I have to do it. So that is known as willpower. That is the power of karma. We have the power of thought. We can go on thinking good things, but unless we do it, it will not result in positivity. So thinking good thoughts is 1/4. Feeling good thoughts is 1/4. That can be done through reading very inspiring or singing bhajan songs, and there are so many methods of controlling and changing our emotions for a positive life. Our emotions are normally negative, fear and all those things. So faith in God, depending on Him, praying to Him, that is how we transmute those negative emotions to a positive emotion. So that can be done through the faculty of emotion. Then there is faculty of willpower. Whenever we get a good idea, just carry it out into practice through service. Whenever you get an opportunity, it does not have to be outside your family. It can be in the family, in your neighborhood, or in the state, or even in the country. The scale is not important. How much you are exerting your willpower and gathering more and more strength, and that will result in positivity. So you have to start acting. And finally, Swamiji says, West accepts only 3 things: the intellectual development, that is mind, accepts the heart, and accepts the will, that is work. But India says to support all these 3, there is one more faculty which we have neglected, and which is our original contribution to the world thought. That is the power of restraining thoughts. We don't know how much problems we are creating, havoc we are creating in our own life and others' lives by simple inability to not to control our thoughts. Our thoughts come like a they come so fast, and they come and confuse us that we cannot make them still. So the power of restraining thoughts, which is known as Raj Yoga. The other 3 yogas are Jnana Yoga, using the mind; Bhakti Yoga, using the emotions or transmuting the emotions in a positive way; then Karma Yoga, by doing selfless work. These 3, but the 4th power is very important, that is Raj Yoga, which Swami Vivekananda emphasized. It is the king of all the yogas, because without a controlled mind, without controlling our own mind, we cannot control anything. Neither can we control negativity, our own negativity, nor can we control others' negativity. We will be going more and more deeper into this negativity. So to come out of negativity, you have to use all the 4 faculties which God has given us. And through the practice of 4 yogas, I don't have much time, but through the practice of 4 yogas, if you read Swamiji's 4 yogas, they are more than enough to develop a very positive, universal, and a positive personality, full of strength, full of faith, and full of confidence. Okay.
Thank you, Swamiji. Thank you so much for the reply.